starting in 5 seconds. Madam Deputy Chairman, from the speeches which the Honorable Minister for Planning made in this House and in the other House, and from the perusal of the note which has been circulated to us regarding the progress that has been made in the 10th 5-year plan and the various statements of the government and the planning commission, I have a feeling that the government of India is trying to assuage the feeling of dissatisfaction in the country through promises of bright future, promises of better efforts, and journal promise that everything is going to turn out all right and that there need not be any fear and anxiety in the country. Madam, while saying this, I realize that the country has made certain progress in the development of our economy during the last decade. Industrial production has increased, agricultural production has increased, the productive capacity has been built up, and we have also got employment opportunities being created. Above all, we have gained valuable experience in the development of our economy, especially in planning, and these are all to the credit side of the plan. Unfortunately, madam, the price that we have paid for this progress is rather heavy. The imbalances that we have created are likely to go out of control unless definite steps are taken to see that the imbalances are corrected at the earliest opportunity. The problem of the distribution of income that is generated as a result of the development efforts in the country is perennial question and comes up again and again in one form or the other before this house, and though I realize that no definite opinion is possible unless we have got some authoritative data and analysis on the subject, there is clear indication of the fact that if not economic wealth, at least economic power is being concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. As long as economic power is concentrated in such few hands, it will not be possible for us to develop in the manner in which we like, whatever may be our regulatory and control apparatus, whatever may be our policy, whatever may be the objectives that we place before the country. Similarly, the imbalance between the rural and the urban sector is also increasing. I do not know whether in the rural areas some income has been pumped in as a result of our planned development. It is possible that the well-to-do peasants, the richer peasants, might have benefited as a result of our economic development, but as far as the rural area as a whole is concerned, the disparity and imbalance is definitely growing, and that is also a matter of concern. The very fact that urbanization takes place at such a rapid rate in our country is visible proof that the imbalance has been growing, with the result that neither the urban areas nor the rural areas are today in a position to live the life that they were living before our planned developmental efforts started. Now there is overcongestion in the urban areas. The civic amenities are all on the point of breaking down, and they continuously break down with the slightest accident here or there. The slums are increasing at a rapid rate, and unemployment is increasing. Whatever may be the figures regarding crimes, etc., that may be published by the government, there is a definite impression in the country that the crime situation is also deteriorating. That is because of the congestion in the urban areas, because of the difficulties due to lack of resources. They are unable to deal with the problems that arise as a result of this overcongestion, and the problem of law and order becomes more acute as a result of this urbanization. Thirdly, the question of unemployment has also taken a rather serious turn, and when the government spokesman addresses homicides to other regarding the agitation against high prices and higher taxes, they completely forget that the year by year one earner has to support more and more people, and we have got the authority of no less a person than the planning minister himself to say that the real income of the earner, at least in the lower income groups, has not risen, and in spite of that, earner has to support a larger and larger number of dependents. There is so much dissatisfaction in the country that people are clamoring against rising prices and rising taxes. The planning minister has given us a frank picture regarding what has happened in the first year of 10th plan period, and we are grateful to him for this frank picture. The figures that he has cited have been us given us a clear idea of what is happening to our economy at the present moment, but he has tried to strike a note of optimism. He has tried to explain the reasons that are reasonable, responsible for this state of affairs, and he has also indicated that the planning commission is conscious of all these drawbacks. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. The crux of the whole matter, therefore, is the inability on the part of the government to manipulate the prices in a manner whereby it may be possible to achieve crop planning in order to achieve the desired results. As long as this price structure is allowed to move in the manner in which it is moving today, whatever may be the policy of the government, howsoever much credit they may pump into the agricultural sector, whatever the amenities they may give to the agriculturists, it will not be possible for us to achieve the targets in the manner in which we want to achieve. I would have been satisfied if, as a result of this increased agricultural production, the farmer was better off, but we find that whenever there is increased production in response to higher prices, the markets slump down so heavily that ultimately the farmer stands to lose instead of to gain. Therefore, the farmer loses both ways and the country also loses. The farmer puts in more money, more resources in the production of crops for which he expects higher returns, and he loses all that money because the prices are not rising to his expectations, and instead the prices fall down rather precipitously, and the country is also losing because there is a very uneven development of agriculture. Therefore, the crux of the whole problem is not just to hold the price line or just to see that black marketing is avoided. That is only one part of the job. A very important part of the price policy, and that has got to be kept in mind. I am not against it. In fact, I am all for it, and I blame the government for not being able to do it so far. But this is another aspect of the price policy to which the Planning Commission, it seems to me, has not applied its mind properly so far, namely the use of price policy as an instrument of crop planning, and as long as that particular tool is not utilized for this objective, it will not be possible for us to have a planned development of our economy. Then there is the question of incentives. We are now told every time that unless incentives are given, it will not be possible for us to develop our economy. We are hearing daily about our export promotion. Now, the problem of incentives also has to be viewed in terms of the objective of the development of a socialistic economy in our country, and not just from the point of view of earning more and more foreign balances. I am not in any way belittling the problem of foreign balances, but ultimately the problem of foreign balances has significance and meaning only in terms of the objectives that the 10th plan has set before it. Therefore, when we are talking of incentives in order to earn more foreign balances, we have also to think of incentives in terms of achieving the objectives that we have got in mind. I was therefore disappointed to read the speech of the planning minister, as he said, as the planning minister at the Indian Labour Conference, in which he seems to have indicated a new approach to the problem of wages. His approach has passed through three stages. In the first stage, just after the general election, the planning minister came out with a statement that he was thoroughly dissatisfied with the way in which the wage structure had developed and that he meant to do something about it. He categorically stated that the real wages had not increased because of intransigence of the management, and he further stated that he wanted to do something about it. Then there came about a discussion as to what could be done, and all the industrialists themselves and the financial newspapers in this country came out with the theory that wages could be increased only if productivity is increased, and therefore wages should be linked with productivity. That was the second stage. Increase productivity and wages will be increased. That was the slogan, or that was the principle which was accepted even by the industrialists. But what do we find in the speech of the planning minister to the Indian Labour Conference? There he says that the even if productivity increases, the first charge will be in respect of projects which are meant for further employment or creation of more employment opportunities. That means even if productivity increases, it is not that the workers will immediately benefit in terms of higher wages, so that it may be possible for them to improve their standard of living a little bit. Even if productivity rises, the fruits of productivity will go to schemes for creating further employment opportunities in the country. How long are the workers to wait, and what exactly will be the stage at which it can be stated that enough employment opportunities have been created and therefore the stage has come for increased wages? Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Madam, you are aware that when this life business was nationalized in the year 1956, great expectations and great hopes were entertained by all members of Parliament. In the statement of objects and reasons relating to that measure, the Finance Minister stated that nationalization was necessary and even imperative to achieve the broad objective of increasing insurance business, to take it to larger areas, including the rural areas, and to give greater returns to policyholders. We have to see, after these few years of the working of this organization, how far we have achieved these great objectives. In the past also, we may remember that many criticisms have been made in regard to the working of this organization. Even the estimates committee has gone into this question and examined in detail the various aspects of the working of this organization. That committee has made certain recommendations. Those recommendations are very important and I will advert to them shortly. Before I deal with them, I wish to make one point clear. In spite of the various criticisms and in spite of the various comments made in the House, in the press, and also through various organizations, the working of this organization has not been improved very much. The report which we are discussing today relates to the year 2006. Obviously, it is a very old document, and a discussion on this report at this hour perhaps is too late. Nevertheless, our discussion is important if we keep in view some of the fundamental problems that are facing this organization. This report was submitted in November 2011, that is to say, some 55 years after the period of the working of this organization. I do not know why there should be such inordinate delay in submitting reports. The report, madam, deals with various aspects. It does not bring out many things which ought to be properly brought out in a report of this kind, and while reading this report, I was not able to make out the working of this organization and to get a proper understanding of it. For that purpose, I have to depend upon other reports and other opinions expressed by various organizations in this country, and thereby I have to gather information. That is why I have to suggest that the report should be comprehensive. I would refer to some of the important problems confronting this organization. The most important among them, in my opinion, is the organizational setup. You remember when this matter came up for discussion in both houses of parliament at the time of the nationalization of this life, business suggestions were made by certain members. I was participating in the other house in the debate then, and I suggested that one corporation would not be better, and it is desirable to have more than one organization to have more than one corporation. I suggested this, and a good many members of my party made this suggestion because they thought that there should be some sort of comparative standards to measure the efficiency and performance of this organization. Without such comparative standards to measure the efficiency and the work of this organization, it would be difficult to judge either the efficiency of the organization or the improvement or progress made by the organization. Therefore, we suggested that there should be more than one corporation, perhaps there should be 3 or 4. Now, after the experience gained, the estimates committee has come to this conclusion that this is a huge monolithic organization whose task has been increasing all the time, and that it has not been possible for this organization to fulfill all the expectations and all the tasks and all the requirements that are expected to be fulfilled by this organization. And so the estimates committee has suggested a radical change, a revolutionary departure with regard to the organizational setup. They have advisedly pointed out 2 alternatives. The first alternative is to set up more than one corporation so that there may be division of work and division of areas. There may also be healthy competition between the corporations so that the country and the people may know which corporation is doing better and which is not doing better. The other alternative they have suggested is that there should be one organization which a federal structure with semi-zonal units functioning. Therefore, I also submit that with this monolithic structure, it would be difficult for the organization to carry out its functions more efficiently and in a direction which is healthy and which is progressive. In the first instance, therefore, I would suggest that the ministry should immediately take steps to see that the whole organizational setup is revised and reorganized so that there may be better efficiency and understanding maintained into the working of this great institution. The organization as it is constituted reveals certain inherent defects. The main office is managed by a large number of officials. Stop.
Starting in 5 seconds. Mr. Vice Chairman, the Delhi Corporation and the Congress Party and also the other political parties in the corporation, in the last corporation as well as in the present one, appointed one committee from the corporation consisting of all the parties which was to consider and decide what amendments they wanted in the Municipal Corporation Act. In the present corporation, also a similar committee is there which has been examining the desirability of introducing new legislation to amend and improve the functioning of the present corporation. That committee is deciding and considering this issue, and its proposals and suggestions will be sent to the Home Ministry very shortly. The Home Ministry is also very anxious that various amendments should be brought forward and that the act should be improved so as to make the corporation very effective and efficient. The Home Ministry have asked for suggestions and proposals from this committee, and the committee is also anxious about it. That being the case, I think that this bill may be postponed pending the consideration of all the suggestions which will come not only from this committee but from the Home Ministry. The Home Ministry themselves have quite a few proposals in view to introduce so as to take care of the various lacunae that are there. Also, this committee of the corporation and the Congress party in Delhi as well as other political parties in Delhi are anxious to make their suggestions. All those suggestions from all the parties and this corporation committee have to be examined in detail by the Home Ministry as well as other departments concerned, and there could be several suggestions by the ministry itself. So, when all those proposals come, then I think the whole bill should be taken up and one complete comprehensive bill should be introduced to take care of all difficulties, shortcomings, and defects that there are in the Municipal Corporation Act. I may only briefly touch some of the difficulties that we have been facing for a very long time. I think the ministry is very particular that the power should be kept in the hands of the executive. All the chairmen are also absolutely helpless, so much so that this is a common talk among the members in the corporation, among the members in the Congress party who have to run some of the show of corporation. The chairperson cannot even call for a file concerning the particular department of which he is the chairman, whether it is the water and sewage board or the transport authority or the medical committee or the health committee or the education committee. None of these elected chairmen who are there have the power or the authority to call for a file and examine the papers. A conversion was going on among the members concerning this problem as to how to handle the affairs of their departments if they could not look at a file or examine it. One suggestion made was that the mayor might can call for the file and the chairman might go to his office and look at the file and then the mayor might return the file. I think it is very ridiculous situation where you have all the 80 people sitting in that corporation hall with no powers at all. When the bill was passed and the corporation was established, I am very sorry to say it was a very nice toy given to the people of Delhi with which they might strike their heads, over which they might quarrel and fight and deteriorate the whole business. It is because they have nothing to do, they have no powers. Then, as our experience goes to show, the machinery of the government is generally not so cooperative. The government are not at all interested in seeing that the corporation's functions should be successful or efficient or that the corporation should succeed. By and large, and very unfortunately, they rarely want that this whole show should be going well. They just as well want to enjoy the failures of the corporation and laugh over them and or even propagate the failures everywhere in public and in private here and there. It is very discouraging, very bad for the morale of the administration and the public at large. Unfortunately, it is like that. It is a fact to reckon with. It is a situation to be faced. Resolutions have been passed by the corporation for so many years, for 3 years, 4 years, and so on. But I think half of the resolutions have not been implemented. Provisions has been made in the budgets for various things, but the money has not been used. The machinery of the corporation is not bothered about it, or is it not serious enough or concerned about implementing the resolutions passed by the government. The resolutions passed by the corporation have certainly to be taken very seriously and implemented faithfully. There is no faithful implementation. The elected member can do nothing about this matter. Stop.
Starting in 5 seconds. The credit movement in this country started in 1904 and it had its own difficulties since the last several decades. The main problem regarding cooperative credit has been that it has been untimely and inadequate. In 1904, the Cooperative Societies Act was passed, which was later amended in 1914. Then there were certain committees appointed and they reported about the weaknesses of the credit movement in the country. In 1919, this subject of cooperation was transferred to the states, after which several states passed cooperative acts of their own. Thereafter, in 1929, the Royal Commission made certain inquiries about cooperation and the credit movement and made certain recommendations, and till 1950 or 1951 there was very little improvement in the field of cooperation. In 2001, the Reserve Bank of India appointed the Rural Credit Survey Committee, which brought out its report in 2004. That committee came to the conclusion that only 3% of the credit required by the agriculturists in the country was being met by the cooperatives, and it made certain suggestions. It suggested that there should be an integrated credit structure in the country and said that there should be share participation by the government in the cooperative societies. It suggested that the government should take shares in the cooperative societies so that the cooperative movement can get strength through government participation. The second recommendation made by the Rural Credit Survey Committee was that there should be linking of credit with marketing, processing, consumption, storage, and all other fields of activity so that credit will develop marketing, consumption, processing, etc. Yet, another recommendation was that there should be a training program for the non officials. The fourth recommendation, and the most salient one, was that there should be a three-tier structure of credit. There should be cooperative societies at the lower level, then there should be district banks, and then the apex banks, and that all the three should be interlinked. These recommendations were accepted by the Government of India. This report also recommended that in order to implement these suggestions, there should be a National Cooperative Development and Warehousing Board. The Government of India had accepted these suggestions in 2006. According to that act, there came into being a warehousing board which took care of the warehouses in the country, and also the National Development Board which took care of the development of the cooperatives. It was first thought that the two boards should work out under two different acts, but as both the subjects were administratively under one ministry at that time, namely the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, it was thought proper at that stage that the same act should administer the National Development Board and the Warehousing Corporation. Thereafter, a separate department of cooperation was created and attached to the Ministry of Community Development, now called the Ministry of Community Development, Panchayati Raj and Cooperation, and it was decided by the government in 2010 that there should be two separate acts, one for Cooperative Development Board and the other for warehousing. In one of the papers submitted by the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, on the basis of which the Presidential Order to create the Department of Cooperation was passed. It was suggested that these two bodies should be administered separately, and that is why we have now come before Parliament with this National Cooperative Development Corporation Bill. The other bill relating to the Warehousing Corporation will come up through the Ministry of Food and Agriculture after the bill is passed. Therefore, sir, the present bill is only an amending bill, and opportunity has been taken to have some minor amendments made in the bill. Firstly, the original act covered only agriculture produce, and agriculture produce had been defined in that act. And now, besides agricultural produce, any notified commodity is also being included. If government wants to include any commodity for which Parliament is competent to legislate, it can notify that commodity and apply the provisions of this measure to that commodity. In that case, we will not have to come to Parliament again and again. Any commodity which is in the concurrent list and for which Parliament can legislate can be notified by government for the application of these provisions. The second amendment is about the functioning committees. In the present act, there is no provision for functional committees. Now, this corporation has to deal with credit processing, marketing, consumers, and all these types of items in order to boost up the cooperative movement. We found that there was a lacuna, and therefore we have suggested a provision to have functional committees. It is only an enabling provision, and after this bill becomes act, we will have functional committees regarding credit, processing, consumers, etc. Then there was no power of delegation. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Before I come to other points, I think it is necessary for me to deal with the substitute motion which has been moved by my honorable friend. Although it is in two parts, really it comes to this, that there is a suggestion that the coal target for the 11th 5-year plan may be revised upwards from the present 97 million tons. He said that this should be raised to 120 million tons and necessary transport arrangements should be made. If in our country our resources were such that we could find ourselves in an easy position, obviously we should always plan in a little easy manner our targets for coal production, transport, power, and some other basic things. But we have to take a realistic view. If our overall resources are limited, financial and the like, we have to make optimum use of whatever those resources are, and we have to fit in various competing priorities within the overall resources. This is a matter which was discussed at great length when we are discussing some days ago our 11th 5-year plan. The 11th 5-year plan has now been approved by Parliament after a very lengthy and detailed discussion in both houses of Parliament. Howsoever tempting this idea may appear to be, namely that we should plan for more transport, for more coal, for more power, and for a number of other things which are basic, they have to take their chance and they have to be fitted within the overall resources that are available. It is true that when the first exercise was made about the target for the 11th 5-year plan, the working group that was entrusted with this task came almost to the conclusion that the figure should be round about 120 million tons. But I would like to share with the Honorable House the processes that were gone through before the figure was arrived at. What should be the total requirement of steel to maintain a certain tempo of development in the course of the next 5 to 10 years? We had to start somewhere. So we started with steel. With so much more steel, what should be the additional quantity of coal that has to be raised not only to feed the steel plants but the additional transport that will be required for them. Therefore, I would differ respectfully from the suggestion, namely that it means only an additional rupees 100 crores for increasing the production of coal from 97 million tons to 120 million tons. If it were really simple, we could perhaps somehow or other find an additional rupees 100 crore, although every crore of rupees having been already taken into account, it will be idle to talk of such a large addition as rupees 100 crores. But it is not rupees 100 crores that would be required but several hundreds of crores, because to utilize that coal, transport will have to be organized either by sea or by road or by rail. For the utilization of that coal, another heavy investment would be required in the form of consuming centers, in the form of other new industrial plants or power plants or the like. We must not be too much obsessed by the present difficulties. By all means, let us try to solve them. Let us not form an exaggerated opinion of the overall requirements from the temporary shortages that we felt towards the end of the 10th plan period. Let us not think radically in revising upwards the figures which cannot, I would repeat, be revised singly. They are a part of an integrated whole. That means really an upward revision of the total size of the plan by another 20% or so, which I think is a suggestion which I am afraid the government cannot accept. Therefore, I would submit that upward revision by that large quantity cannot be accepted, although it is tempting. If I take a purely administrative view, it is easy for me to say that this is a good suggestion and we should accept it. But we have to view that in the lights of the overall requirements of the country, the overall capacity of the country to consume, and the overall capacity of the country to invest, find the financial resources and other organizational resources in order to be able to revise upward our total plan by that significant percentage. That I am afraid is not possible. Therefore, this figure of 97 million tons, which has been mentioned in the plan, has been arrived at after very careful consideration of the various requirements. Having said that much on the resources position, I would like to say something about production. Honorable members have given a great deal of thoughts to it, and naturally the discussion has been somewhat discursive and a total overlapping, which was quite natural when we are discussing such a wide subject. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Madam, the bill which has been moved just now has been rightly described by the Prime Minister as a non controversial bill and as a bill which is very useful in order to develop the atomic energy in our country. The bill provides for the regulation of radioactive and other prescribed substances which are to be used, which are being handled, which might be produced, and which might be imported, so that there may not be any hazards which are incidental to the handling of such substances, and adequate rules are to be made regarding them. As far as these rule making powers are concerned, madam, there is one aspect of it which needs some consideration, namely, as far as the production of these substances in the country itself is concerned. The establishments in which these substances are going to be produced are to be governed and controlled as far as the safety measures are concerned, and as far as the factory acts are concerned by the central government. As far as this provision is concerned, it is desirable because these are not just ordinary factories, but these are factories that have to deal with certain substances for which special protection is necessary, and perhaps the Atomic Energy Commission is the right authority to determine what type of protection is necessary for that. At the same time, in the rule making power which the central government has taken, precautions should be taken to see that the safety measures regarding other aspects of the matter as far as the work of the labor in these factories is concerned are also of the same standard, if not of a better standard, as those provided for in the Factories Act elsewhere. That is, attention should not be concentrated only on the hazards incidental to the handling of these substances, but other amenities to which the workers are entitled in ordinary factories should also be provided for in any rules that might be made under this measure. Along with this precaution, this power is absolutely necessary, and therefore I support the same. Secondly, there is the question of acquiring certain materials which might yield useful substances that are necessary for the development of atomic energy. The idea perhaps is to get all these materials within the control of the Atomic Energy Commission because these substances are very rare and they are to be conserved. This raises the question of research and the facilities for inquiry which might be able to an ordinary citizen who may not be fortunate enough to have some employment or admission into these atomic energy establishments. It is perhaps one of the conditions of modern life that any scientific research and inquiry involve dangerous implication so that they are to be controlled and coordinated under the AEGIS of the government, and to that extent perhaps the freedom of inquiry might be affected. But at the same time, the history of scientific development has shown that all the worthwhile inquiries, or many of the worthwhile inquiries and inventions, have been made by people who are not easily amenable to any coordination or regulation of the type of to which the government is normally accustomed, and therefore some scope has to be left for free inquiry by these geniuses in the community also. I do not know how that can be done, but perhaps one way of doing it will be to disseminate as much of scientific information as is possible in the community to the largest possible extent, so that at least as far as the paperwork is concerned, no one is handicapped. I am just a layman and I am not quite acquainted with the various types of developments that are going on regarding the issues connected with the development of atomic energy, but there seems to be some indication that any worthwhile jump that will now come in this particular field is likely to be on the theoretical plane, because as far as the practical aspects are concerned, we have reached a dead end and it is not possible to go beyond that. In view of this, it is all the more necessary that as far as the theory is concerned and as far as the basic material connected with this theory is concerned, it is disseminated to the largest possible extent in our community, so that our people may become conscious of the type of work that is going on and of the type of work that is needed in order to make further progress in this field and various other fields in this country. Thirdly, there is the question of acquiring certain emanating rights as far as these substances are concerned. Here again, it is necessary that the authorities should be centralized, and obviously it would be in the hands of the central government and the Atomic Energy Commission. But again, this also raises the further question of paying adequate attention to the interests of the states that are concerned, in whose areas these mines are located. Stop.
Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, 2007 has been a year of persistent challenge and of determined response by the government. It has been a year of achievement in the face of great difficulties. Some difficulties were caused by disruptive forces within the country, some difficulties by disruptive forces inspired from abroad, and some difficulties were caused by the weather. When in 1966-67 Indraji launched the Green Revolution, she too was faced with similar difficulties, weather difficulties. It was her farsightedness that has given our economy the strength and resilience with which it has met the present crisis, with which we have been able to meet the present crisis entirely through our efforts and our endeavor. We have not carried the begging bowl to anyone. We have not compromised on our freedom of action. At that time, Indraji's strategy was opposed by many experts and technicians. It was opposed by certain myopic elements in the opposite benches. Indraji prevailed because of her faith in the efforts of our Kisans, because of her confidence in the ability of our scientists, because of her trust in the performance of our extension workers. She assured farmers of the required inputs at reasonable prices despite the burden of subsidy on our economy. She gave the farmers remunerative prices as the cardinal principle of the new strategy. She nationalized the banks to give credit at the doorstep of the farmer. She initiated a system of countrywide procurement to stabilize the prices that the farmers would get. Indraji ensured that her strategy looked to the interest of all sections of our rural community, not just the farmer but also the small and marginal cultivator, landless laborer, and even the rural artisan. We doubled our output in 2 decades because of her integrated vision of rural India, her sympathy and understanding for each segment of our rural society, because of her assiduous attention to inputs, to costs, and to subsidies. Today, after 4 years of bad monsoon, 2 years of poor rains, followed by 2 years of severe drought, we can hold our heads high and look to the future with confidence, because Indraji laid the foundations which were sure, sound, and secure. Our drive to maximize the rabi output is meeting with encouraging success. We hope to limit the shortfall to 10%, but the problem is not entirely over. During this past year, we have done much to mitigate the distress of drought. Relief programs have been handled efficiently by and large by all the states. The ceiling of assistance has been put at the high level of rupees 1400 crore, with almost half of it earmarked for Gujarat and Rajasthan, as they were the most severely hit. Surcharges on taxes have been used so that the burden does not fall on the poor and only the rich have borne this burden.
Using food grain buffer stocks, we have launched programs to generate employment, to build assets, to cushion against future droughts. Through worthwhile relief schemes, we have ensured that expenditure on relief became expenditure on development. We have rushed fodder from areas of surplus to areas of scarcity. Special schemes for drinking water have been implemented, and we have taken up special programs for boosting the demand for the output of the village artisans and the handloom weavers. This is especially important because these are sections who normally get left out and they face very severe consequences of the side effects of a drought. The genesis of the Green Revolution was the scientific breakthrough which brought in a new hybrid seeds. It was also a complete package of inputs to the irrigated land leading to self-sufficiency in food grains. We must now ensure that there is no leveling off of our food grains production. The scientific community must be galvanized into providing answers to the new next phase of the green revolution of taking it to new areas, expanding it to new crops, and making it resilient to the vagaries of the weather. Already, the special rice production program is spreading throughout the eastern UP and is changing eastern UP into the new greenery of India. Dryland farming has been boosted by the technology mission on oilseeds and by the national project for pulses. The primary cause for our not surpassing the 2003-4 record food grains crop has been the weather, and it would therefore be reasonable to hope for a better monsoon this year. Our objective must remain to regain the momentum of the 10th plan in the 11th plan. We will give a new thrust and a new impetus to agriculture. We have given careful attention to agriculture already. I have held review meetings at various levels and I have given specific directions to the Planning Commission to revamp the plan for agriculture. I have instructed them to reorder the priorities to give agriculture the highest importance. I have asked them to furnish a detailed district-wise crop plan for the coming season. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Mr. Speaker, sir, yesterday the Honorable Minister and today the Chairman of the Select Committee have fully explained the various clauses of the bill and certain important changes that have been effected by the Select Committee. I propose to confine myself to two or three important features of the bill which require re-examination and close attention by the government. Sir, I need hardly emphasize the important role which the electricity supply undertakings play in the national economy of the country. Indeed, the development in other spheres depends upon the full development of the supply of power, and this bill is of vital importance, affecting as it does the development of electric supply undertakings in the country. I am focusing attention on the role that the private electricity undertakings are playing in the supply of electric power with a view to drawing the attention of government to the difficulties that are bound to be faced by these electricity undertakings in one or two directions. In this connection, I would not therefore like to take much of the time of the House, but I would like to draw the attention of the Honorable Minister to what my Honorable friend Sri Tulsidas has stated and with whose comments I am in full agreement. As a matter of fact, the approach of the government to the bill is to fulfill three basic considerations so vital for the healthy growth of this industry. Firstly, that its proper control and regulation is but necessary. I fully agree that this is subject to certain differences on basis aspect, but the important consideration governing this bill is to attempt at providing suitable incentives to the industry which alone can enable it to increase its capacity to the desired extent. Therefore, I would like to refer to the incentives as provided in the bill and to the need for liberalizing the clause in respect of the fair return to the investors in these undertakings. I would like to draw the attention of the Honorable Minister to the fact that since the passing of the original Act in 1948, only 8 states throughout the country have constituted the statutory electricity boards. Among these states are Madhya Pradesh, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Rajasthan, Punjab, Orissa, and Maharashtra, and therefore we find that many of the states have still to constitute these electricity boards. I would like to know from the Honorable Minister why, in the matter of the constitution of Electricity Board, many of the states have not implemented the provisions of the bill and what the central government have done to ensure that these electricity boards are constituted in all the states as desired in the provisions of the original act. Perhaps it may have been the problem of taxation which comes soon of the states may have in view while not proceeding with the constitution of the electricity boards. But whatever might be the reason, and even as far as this question of taxation is concerned, the central government may have to lay down some sort of subvention or such other assistance as it found necessary. I think that this matter of the constitution of the electricity board throughout all the states is of vital importance and should be looked into by the central government to ensure that necessary steps are taken in the remaining states for the constitution of these boards. I would now like to say something about the deferred taxation reserve about which the Honorable Minister yesterday said that the amendment regarding this has been brought forward at the instance of the Federal of Electricity Undertakings. The whole complication arises due to the fact that the provisions of the Income Tax Act and the provisions of the Electricity Supply Act are contradictory to each other. While the Income Tax Act with an accelerated depreciation in earlier years results in larger tax relief in the earlier period, and thereby the tax liability of the undertakings is deferred for a future period. The Electricity Supply Act restricts the provision of depreciation to a much lesser degree, and to that extent, the profits of the electricity undertakings in regard to the income tax, development, and depreciation rates are restricted. That act lays down a smaller depreciation as compared to what is allowed under the Indian Income Tax Act. What has now been done has been put with certain restrictions that it does not really solve the demand that was put forward by the Federation. As a matter of fact, if the electricity undertakings should have been allowed to set aside that reserve for taxation liability for future years out of the profits which they earn year by year out of the rate increase which they have put into force from time to time, that would have met the needs of the situation. But the clause as it has emerged would rather create more difficulties than solve them, as it has therefore been further represented to the Minister by the Federation of Electricity Undertakings. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. As far as khadi is concerned, my own practical experience is that the khadi board does not have sufficient number of centers, especially in the areas which are the most backward. For instance, in the Sundarbans area, which has only one crop a year and which is actually very poor and backward as far as industrialization goes, we find hardly any center, either purchasing or training center. The other thing we note is that the individual who is spinning at home does not know where to take the yarn, because there is no publicity or propaganda to help the individual spinners to go and sell their yarn, with the result that although large amounts of subsidy are being given by government, it is not going to the help of the majority of those who are today wanting some form of cottage industry employment. That is why I feel that it is very essential now that it is being done on a national scale that government purchasing and training centers should be opened in the areas which are most backward, so that we may not notice this type of shortfall at a time when in every village to which you go, the women, especially the agricultural laboring women, crowd round you and ask you how you are going to give them some form of employment. The other thing I want to stress is the question of village industries. This is especially a thing in which a certain amount of research is also required. In these areas, I am afraid nothing has been done, although we approach the industries department again and again. Nobody in the village knows who is the competent authority to tell them how to approach government for help, for research, for the result of research, for production centers for training or for marketing. If we go to the subdivisional officer, he is not able to tell us. The whole thing is in such a state of flux that actually the money which is being given is not being utilized by the people who are starving due to unemployment. Some of them have the technical skill also. Some are anxious to find new ways and methods of developing these industries. Yet that is not being done, and I am afraid it is one of the biggest drawbacks of this entire ministry, and it should be removed very quickly. I think one of the reasons why this shortfall is taking place is the big difference and gap between the sums of money for which we are budgeting and passing in this house and its actual utilization and reaching the masses who are so eager for employment and who are suffering from so much poverty due to unemployment. I am in sympathy with the observations made by the previous speaker because, as one who has been connected with one of these boards, I have felt a lot of difficulties in expediting the work and spending the money allotted. I feel that the whole organization does require modification so far as the organizational aspect is concerned. It is known that the government's method of doing anything is rather slow and tardy. The procedure is very difficult and prolonged, and here we have to deal not with one particular section of the people or industry fixed at a particular place. The whole activity is spread over the villages, long distances, and families whose condition the non-officials are in the best position to know and appreciate. Here, the secretary, the deputy secretary, or the under secretary is sitting in some office, or the deputy minister or minister is sitting somewhere surrounded by secretaries and deputy secretaries. He knows their point of view only. He is obsessed with certain formalities, etc. He is not obsessed with the condition of the poor people, and their difficulties are not realized so much as the difficulties of the secretariat. That is the real problem, and that has to be tackled. As a matter of fact, the question of having a statutory body has been hanging fire for a long time. The Khadi and Village Industries Board consists of a very good set of people who are very enthusiastic, who are people with missionary zeal. They have been doing this work all their life. They are on this board, but they are find themselves handicapped because they cannot function independently. They are tied down by so many rules and regulations and all kinds of forms and formalities. We must trust these people who have devoted their life to this work. Their main aim in life has been to work for these people. It is high time that we made this body a statutory body. I understand that such a demand had been made by them, and I hear that even a bill had been drafted for that purpose. I would like to know why nothing has been done so far in that direction and why it was ignored. The government of India should take immediate action in this matter. Stop.